We are live on Face. Nope, not yet. Live
Yeah.
video.
Oh,
Going almost. I don't know
we're
what it is.
almost there. We're getting
Thank
it.
you, Instagram. Thanks for bearing with us, guys. We're so glad you're here. Okay, so this is live. You are live. Billy and I are live.
We're alive.
We're alive. We're all alive. This is a good thing. Okay, so I'm going to share this really quickly on my Facebook page. But Billy, why don't you start us off? Introduce why we're here, who we are.
So, we are the Glorified Project, and we have come together and decided it is time for us to start a podcast, which we've been talking for, man, almost probably over a year
Yeah,
now. We've just been kind of
easily.
putzing around. So,
Easily.
but now we're just like, Jesus is like, let's get it. And so we're getting it. So, we're here, especially with the election.
Yes.
So, that's super important that we get our voices out there and just what we call our podcast is going to be Let's Talk About It.
Let's talk about it.
So, my name is Billy. This is my girl Emily. And we both have stories that completely collide against everything that our election is gearing towards. You know, they're saying that this is the abortion election. And it saddens our heart because we both walk through these very same issues. They're saying that you have to have an abortion or you should have an abortion, and it's not.
No.
Those are not true true statements. I can say for myself, I was 21, and I found myself in a situation, as many 21-year-olds are out there having a good time, and just being young and dumb. But I was out there, and I ended up being raped at 21. Not only was I raped, but I lost my virginity, and I found out I was pregnant. So what do they say? Takes three, three strikes or whatever,
Yeah.
type of thing. So like I said, my story is I was raped and I became pregnant, and they're saying, hey, you should be able to have an abortion because you were raped, you were violated, which is all true, but at the same time, I didn't feel like it was the baby's fault for my situation. It wasn't my fault for the situation that I was in. And, statistically, 70% of women who are raped don't abort. So where does these numbers come in for, Planned Parenthood?
Yeah.
Or the so-called health, women's health. It's not. And I believe that it would have been caused a double trauma. Not only am I having to face what happened, but now I have to face the situation of having this baby ripped out of my body. So that's my point. Is there's no reason for an abortion. 9 months is 9 months of time for me to heal, to comprehend what happened to me, understand what happened to me, allow myself to forgive myself, because there's a lot of shame and guilt for women who are raped. We take on what our perpetrator did to us. And I think that's why a lot of women don't abort. Two reasons would be 70% of rapes are not reported. So that's why 70% of women don't abort. But I also believe that being someone who is a victim has a different mentality of like, well, this is not a baby's fault. They're just as much of a victim in our situation as mine. And I think mentality wise, we realize that. Versus someone who's never been in our situation can just be like, oh, you can abort. You have every right to do it.
Right.
So for me, I chose not to. My son is 25, and he is absolutely amazing.
That's awesome.
He's getting married, so I know his fiance is super excited that I didn't abort him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Friends and family all love him,
Absolutely.
and
Good
I
guy.
don't think any of us could imagine life without him. And he's awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah, maybe we'll have him on here one of these days,
Yes.
or have him, come introduce himself. Like Billy said, we're just excited to be here. A lot of you, Des, I see you're on here, and guys, feel free to share this if you know there's somebody who could benefit from us sharing our testimonies. We're going to do this we're going to do it for the foreseeable future, once a week.
Yes.
And like Billy said, with the election coming up, it's just important to be talking about this topic. There's a lot of misinformation. We get censored a lot for mis and disinformation, but we're telling the truth. And so those of you on here who know Billy and I know our stories, and I'll share mine in just a second, know that what we present is not mis and disinformation.
Yeah.
And we meet with women on a regular basis, whether they've had an abortion or are considering an abortion or complications like an ectopic pregnancy. We've met with women. We just want you to know you're not alone, and we understand from experience.
Yeah.
And so much information that's out there is half truths.
Right.
And so we would love to sit down with you, and whether you join us here on the podcast and listen, or if you ever want to call in sometime, and we're here to pray for you and love on you. So my testimony, those of you who don't know, this was a long time ago, 16-ish years ago. My husband and I were pregnant with our first child. We found out at the 20-week ultrasound that he had a complication that was not viable with life. The medical term was called bilateral renal agenesis or agenesis. Layman's term, it's actually called Potter's syndrome, which the Lord's been like, it's interesting. It's called Potter's syndrome. He's the potter, we're the clay. That's one of those interesting things. The Lord was like, Gabe, our son Gabe, that was his name, passed away from Potter's syndrome. But anyways, so at 20 weeks, we at the ultrasound found out that he had failed to develop kidneys, which made his life not viable and not compatible, using the words that they tell us today, viable, not compatible outside of the womb. So we were told at 20 weeks to terminate that pregnancy, and they walked my husband and I through what that would look like. And at 20 weeks, your baby is pretty much full formed. It just needs to cook a little bit longer, right, and grow, right, plump up a little bit, you know. And they walked us through what that looked like, and it was full dismemberment and then removal of our son. And so we weren't okay with that. And so we said no. We said no to terminating the pregnancy and having an abortion. And we ended up carrying him. I went into labor at 33 weeks, and I delivered him, and he was alive for about an hour, and then he passed an hour after birth. But we did have that hour with him. He was kind of alive through the umbilical cord. But yeah, and then he passed quietly, never made a peep, never cried, never anything like that. And so my husband and I and Billy and the Glorify Project, we want to come alongside women and dads of the babies and let them know they're not alone in their situation, or like my husband and I in our specific situation, that you can choose life in that situation, in that circumstance, and that you don't have to terminate. And so often, not at all criticizing the medical field, but sometimes a diagnosis can be wrong too. So not that what our son had was wrong, but there are a lot of times where a baby can have a misdiagnosis, and then the baby doesn't have what maybe they were diagnosed with. So we just want people to know, it's a scary situation to be in.
Yeah.
And doctors will come at you with all kinds of information, and that's all good, but know that you aren't alone if you're facing a unique situation like ours, or a pregnancy from rape, that you can totally do it. You can totally go through that pregnancy with support, with dignity. That's the word the Lord's given us as the Glorify Project. And even my husband and I with our season with Gabe, because the doctors and the specialists didn't treat my husband and I with dignity throughout that season. They weren't mean, but there definitely wasn't, they didn't understand why we were choosing life. They thought, the easier decision would be to terminate and then just start over. And just when they told us what that looked like, I remember having like an out-of-body experience. Like, this is my life. What is happening, And my husband and I just weren't okay with that. So anyways, my son Gabe is with Jesus now. And those of you who know the continuation of that story, we have twins. We went on and had twins. They're 15 years old. You may see them come in and out of this shot because we don't have a podcast studio yet.
Not yet.
So we're in my kitchen. Welcome to the Anderson house kitchen. But anyways, and they're a double blessing, and God has been good to us. So we just want to open up the dialogue, you know what I mean? To discuss with women, with men, with young people, with old people, that, the election is coming up. We know that there's, like we said, a lot of mis and disinformation swirling around out there. We were just talking about some different things online, posts that were, Billy came in kind of fired up to this podcast today because she had read something online and she was like, let's pray. But because there's a lot of hyperbole. Hyperbole, is a big word for a lot of emotion, and maybe not all truth, half truths. And they try to make it sound way more emotional. And that's not to say abortion isn't emotional. It doesn't, not to say rape isn't emotional, or having a baby that's not viable isn't emotional. It is, but like Billy already said, and Billy can take the mic now, but that, you can go to Planned Parenthood and they're only going to give you one side of the story.
Yeah.
They're going to only tell you one option. And then, as you were saying, there's no comfort if you choose to terminate a pregnancy. There's no post-op, comfort and counseling and consulting. Because we've met with those women. We have women on our team who experience that, who can speak very, real to that. So.
Yeah. In my situation, I had a friend that I was living with at the time, and she had not told me prior to my situation. She had mentioned that she was dating this guy. She knew that they were going to get married one day, and she said he was a great uncle. He was going to be a really great father, and there was no question about their forever love together. And she ended up becoming pregnant and didn't know what to do. And she talked to him, and he's like, well, whatever you want to do, it's your choice, which is really hard to say, I support you, but I don't support you type of, it's all in your hands type of situation. And she was someone who was very if you want to have an abortion, have it. It's up to you, not a big deal or anything like that. And there's one thing that we definitely do not agree on with a lot of some of these right to life movements. Not all, but they're back in the day, back in the late 90s, early 90s, there were some really horrible right to life people. I mean, for her, she was decided that right now wasn't the time for them to have a baby, so she went and she chose to have an abortion. And just before she even walked in, people were standing out there telling her she was a murderer, she was a whore, she was just degrading her the whole entire time. And that was before she even walked into the doors. And she said that the minute that the abortion happened, nothing became so black and white to her. Talking about how they just took her to a room, put her on a lazy boy chair with 4 other girls bawling their eyes out. The stories they don't tell you. And then having to have that moment of realizing what you did, and now you have to walk out the door with those same people. And when you're now you actually really believe those things about yourself. She was devastated. And then when we found out I was pregnant through my situation, she moved out. She's like, I can't live with you. I can't live in this situation knowing what happened to you. Wasn't your choice, and you're choosing to keep your baby. I was in and still am in this loving relationship. I know we're going to get married, and yet I aborted my baby. And unless you're actually sitting down actually with someone who's had an abortion, in the statistics of incest, which is 1% of and women who are raped, unless you actually sit down and talk with these women, you don't know the story. You don't know what's behind that story. And like you said, there's a lot of disinformation out there, but when you actually listen to our stories, this truth. You can't tell me my story is not true, because I walked through that story, and I'm walking through that story right now, and I want to walk with other women who have been in that situation. It's not going to be easy. Single parenting isn't easy ever. And we want to be there for women. Their stories matter. They're not alone, and we're here to help them. And some women may not even choose to keep the baby. They might put the baby up for adoption. We don't know statistically what happens after that 70% of women who choose not to abort. We don't have those numbers. But all we know is 70% of those babies are born. Versus the hundreds of thousands that are not.
The alternative.
Because people are like, well, it was a one night stand, or it was, we're not ready, or people are telling me that I'm not ready, and that's a lot of push. Is you hear a lot of girls who are like, well, nobody told me I should do this. It says it's going to ruin my life.
Mm-hmm.
Babies don't ruin your life.
Mm-mm.
Is it hard? Yeah.
Yeah.
Single
Mm-hmm.
or in parent situations,
Right.
it's hard.
It is hard.
So, you know, I just it just breaks my heart
Hmm.
that people can just be in one room. A doctor can be in one room delivering a baby and everybody rejoicing. That same doctor getting up and going to another room and saying, "Well, let's just tear this baby apart."
Yep.
And there's just no,
Remorse.
yeah,
Or, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no aftercare. My friend,
Hmm.
no one called her, no one checked up on her. There was
Hmm.
no like reschedule an appointment. Let's see how you're doing.
Right. Follow
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just at the abortion clinic. Now we often talk about the the pill being sent to women's houses. I mean, I know we've heard the stories about the two women who unfortunately passed away after taking the pill.
Mm-hmm.
It was not because of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one lady was clearly a medical
Emergency.
emergency,
Right.
and those doctors didn't do their jobs, and it's been proven
Negligence. Yeah.
over and over again by doctors, by the hospital. They were saying these doctors didn't do what they were supposed to. It has nothing to do with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're upset, sorry, it's back in the state's hands.
Yep.
It's the people in your state that are saying, we don't want this.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's some places like our state, which is disgusting. You can
Capital, abortion capital.
yeah,
The U.S.
you
and
can
Oregon.
have the baby and the baby just die. Wells
Yep.
just passed that law in his state too. If a baby is born of abortion, they just leave them to die.
Yeah.
And it's their option to do that.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah, and so and like Billy was saying, we know that some of the pro-life, not current pro-life messaging, and if you've seen pro-life messaging that, comes off as militant or unloving, that's definitely not the heart of God, and that's not the heart of most pro-lifers. And so that's something we pray about. I can be very politically minded because that's a passion of mine. But when it comes to the Glorify Project, and specifically meeting with women and men in their unique situations, that's not how you address the situation. Mm-hmm. That you don't blast them and you don't say you're going to hell and God's judgment is on you. No, the good news is God's judgment fell on Jesus. Not going to get preachy on here, but God's judgment fell on Jesus so that we then, if we come to know Jesus, we don't have that judgment anymore. Yeah. And so that always irks me as you see people who claim the name of Jesus, claim the name of Christ at abortion clinics, and when they're acting that way, that is not Christ-like. Now, there are people who can be there and want you to talk with them or pray with them, right? And they may plead with you to pray, but anybody who's saying, like, condemning you to hell, that's not the real true pro-life movement. Does not talk that way. We want you to know you're not alone. Again, we're here. We understand. We really understand. Yeah. And the other women on our team also understand. And so we just want you, before you make any decisions, if you're listening to this maybe on a replay and you're someone recommended you listen to this or follow the Glorify Project because Billy's been through what you're going through, or me, or the women on our team, Marion or Shauna, or anyone in our extended team. My mom, which you don't know my mom when I say mom, her name's Amy. Anything awesome. Anybody's been through that, we would just ask you, before you make any decisions, reach out to somebody who's been there, and counsels other women, has met with other women, and we do understand the decision you make is difficult, like Billy said, because even continuing the pregnancy is a difficult decision. And the only other thing I want to say, and turn it back to Billy, Billy made the point that there's never a case for an abortion, like, to make that argument, and that there are, if you yourself can't handle having, say, another child, or you're not in a position to have it, or you're young, or whatever the reason would be, we understand that. But there are currently, in the U.S. alone, 2 million couples looking to adopt in the U.S. And that's something the Glorify Project is working on. We want to connect at some point with an adoption agency that we then can refer women to. Mm-hmm. And we have them in the state of Oregon, but we haven't made like a direct connection. But that there are literally 2 million couples, whether they can't have children, are on it, either physically can't, or for whatever the circumstances, they haven't been able to have children, or they have a heart of adoption. So there are people who want your kids, who would love to have your baby if you can't take care of your baby. So that's something we love to encourage women too, is that there are those who are, like, yearn to have children and they can't. And if you can, they'd love to have your baby. There's my son. Told you, we're in our kitchen. There's Will walking through the podcast. So just wanted to encourage you in that there are so many options. And no, we're not just pro-birth. A lot of people like to we've heard that about us in the Glorify Project. We're just pro-birth. You're just getting the baby to birth. No, we are pro-mom, we're pro-baby, and we're pro-dad. And Billy often says, to get to the mom, like, we save the baby, but it's about the mom. You know what I mean? So it's more than just getting the baby to birth. We want, we can share at the end. We are in the process of raising money for a maternity home to house women. So, and you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we are going to be doing a couple of fundraisers here till the end of the year. Our goal is to have a maternity home here in the Willamette Valley, which we think is a great place because we are a college town. And, it's college and things happen. I was 21. I was a college age student, and things happen. And, we went from this world of women empowerment of you can have a family and you can have a career. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden it was like, oh, guess what? You can either have a family or you can have a career. You can't have both. And that's not true. And the only reason why I believe that has come up is because we don't value families anymore. We have a lot of divorces, we have a lot of separations, a lot of things that happen. Not to get into that topic, but
that's a podcast for another time.
But those are
family unit.
Yeah, the family unit. It's not intact like it used to be. But we do want to start a maternity home because we do want to help these girls that do want to have their babies and they just don't have the support. We want to walk with them through their pregnancy. They get to live with us for 1 year after pregnancy. They get all the counseling they need. They want to help them continue their education if they just want to go right into the workforce. Anything trauma that they've been through emotionally, mentally. Some women just don't know even how to take care of themselves properly. So now we get to show them how to take care of themselves, how to schedule, time management, money management, and how to take care of their babies, And there's hopefully we have some women who are just like, abortion isn't really for me, but I can't do this pregnancy. I can't raise a baby. This is where we would love to be connected with an adoption agency for a woman that says, I'm not going to take care of the baby because I can't, and I would love to give this to a family. So we want to be well-rounded. I just want to say real quick, I know it sounds like we're just like one-sided, even though we keep saying that, we're not just one-sided. But we honestly want to give women their choices. They lay it all on the table, and even if you choose what we wouldn't choose personally or what we believe in, your choices are between you and God. But if for some reason the choice that you made is really devastating to you, or you just feel lost and alone because of the choices you made, we still love you.
Yes.
We're gonna still bring you into the fold, I guess you could say, and we're gonna help you do whatever you need to do to be whole again.
Yes,
things shape us in ways that will direct our lives in a completely different direction. But you're not lost, and you're not alone.
No.
Your voice matters. Your story matters. And one thing that we really want you to know is we see you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I love Billy's heart for all you precious ladies. I get intense, and Billy's very compassionate. Not that I'm not compassionate, but Billy gets it. Like, she's the heart of the Glorify Project, as are all the women on the team. But you always help me be more loving, and I appreciate that. Because exactly what she said is exactly the case, that you may be on this live and maybe you have already made that decision and you terminated a pregnancy, and you're just, and maybe you're restless. Maybe it's been decades. I spoke to a woman on Facebook like a year ago, 2 years ago, and she was hair in my face, and she had said, she just DM'd me on Facebook, and she's like, no one knows this, and is now a grandma, so this was decades ago, and she's like, no one knows, but she was, I have to tell somebody, and she said that she had an abortion when she was really, really young. And she goes, the fact that you're willing to talk about it, and you're talking about it lovingly, and we're supportive and compassionate. She goes, I just needed to tell you that I had an abortion, and this was like 40 years ago, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I thanked her for telling me and for being vulnerable and sharing and whatnot. And I told her, the Lord loves her, and the Lord loves her baby. And we can talk about babies, where your babies are if you've had an abortion. But so she just felt like she needed to just take that off her shoulders, because the Lord forgives you, and the Lord wants you to forgive yourself if maybe you're someone who has made the decision to have an abortion, and we would love to sit with you and love on you in that situation too. So this is not just for moms who are currently pregnant, but we want you, if you're post-abortion, to know, like Billy said, you're not alone. You matter. Your story, your testimony matters. And our heart is even like us in the Women of the Glorified Project, that as you heal and process if you've had an abortion, process your abortion, and get to a place that you can then come alongside maybe another mom and be someone of an encourager in their life, and comfort them and help them, whether they choose to terminate as well or not. But you get to use your story isn't wasted on God. Yeah. He will use what you've been through. So, and then as far as your baby goes, your baby is with Jesus. Yeah. And that is a message the Lord had given me years ago. And, we reiterate that here in this podcast and in what we do at the Glorified Project, that if you've made that decision to terminate, your baby is with Jesus and you will see them again. My heart is that you would just make that decision to come to know Jesus. Not that this is you don't have to be saved to be on this, to watch, to listen or to watch, but our heart is that you would come to know Jesus, because he is literally the only reason why I am here today. And I'm sure you could say the same, and the women on our team, and that your babies are with him. They're okay. They're not mad at you. They're not in heaven resenting you and, my mom. No, they literally, the vision the Lord showed me years ago was that they're in heaven and they can't wait for us to get there. So my son's there. I know you have a baby. Yes. There. That's another podcast for another time. But a couple of us have children there, whether infant loss or miscarriage, or an abortion. And our kids are running around. They're having a good time. They're with Jesus, and they literally are like, can't wait to get here. Just get here. Yeah. Their heart is very much like, just get here. And that's Jesus's heart too. So, but yeah, so this is episode 1. Episode one. So we, like I said, we're still figuring out what our format is so far, and where it's going to be. It's not going to always be in my kitchen. We'll figure that out.
My kitchen's next.
We're going to Billy's house next. But at some point we'll introduce you to some of our members. And we want you, please feel free to comment or write in with questions. Yeah, please. Even if you're angry, please don't hold back. Maybe tone down the colorful language, but we're not afraid. And we, want you to know you're loved. And
again, like she said, comments, no matter if you agree with us or disagree with us, we can only be stronger when we listen to each other. And we don't want to be divided, because at the end of the day, I can guarantee you that in the midst of a good conversation, we'll find common ground.
Yep. Absolutely. We're not meant to be, this is not a combative podcast. The only thing that's remotely of a stark difference, and this has been our heart, is there's so much messaging coming at you from quote unquote the other side. And so we want to offer the perspective on the pro-life side, because there's so much information inundating us right now, especially politically, especially with the election coming up. Sorry, still going through puberty. And so we just want to be kind of that that harbor, safe harbor in the storm of life for moms. That they can come and listen, be encouraged, know they're not alone, and just offer the other side with love and dignity and respect. And like Billy said, I love what Billy made the point about, we want you to know all your options. We're not here to tell you, with an iron fist, don't have an abortion. We would obviously advise against that, but we want you to know that there's so much more available to you apart from an abortion.
Yeah.
So, and we can connect you with, if you're in Oregon, if you're in the Willamette Valley, we can connect you with resources down here. We're a resource. And then here in the very near future, we will have a home. So for women, and really quickly, we were going to have a fundraiser this Saturday, but unfortunately we had a couple board members step down. Everything's great. We're just busy. Things are busy in life right now, as you all know. So we are not going to have an in-person fundraiser this Saturday. We may go live on Saturday, and announce what we're going to do. We originally thought, well, we'll go live on that day and do something that day as the fundraiser. Because we haven't said too much, we'll announce something Saturday, and we're going to do an online fundraiser and do some fun giveaways. We have some connections with organizations and some things that want to partner with us, and maybe do some fun giveaways as our way of fundraising this year. So, and you can give it anytime. You can go to where? The Glorify Project.org. And there's a green button that says give, and that goes to our Give, Send, Go. We do have a P.O. box. If you need that information, send us a DM and we can send you that. You can send a snail mail check or something. Yeah. But 100% of the proceeds, nothing goes to us. We are official nonprofit here in Oregon, and 100% of the proceeds goes to the women that we serve. So, and then the house. So, awesome. Well, this is Billy.
I'm Billy.
And I'm Emily. And our team is amazing. Marion and Shauna and everybody. We're the Glorify Project. And this is Let's Talk About It, right? Let's talk about it. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.